Welcome to Levels of Connection, where we discuss how human connections work and why they're so important. Welcome to Levels of Connection. Today I'm speaking with Jane Adshead-Grant, and we're exploring generative attention, the art of truly listening to one another, and the benefits of that. Enjoy. Jane, welcome to Levels of Connection.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you, Stephanos, and your listeners too.
Thank you so much for being here. And a big thank you also to EMCC Cyprus, the Cyprus chapter of EMCC. We met at their latest conference that they organized a few weeks ago. So a big thank you to them as well for the great organization and for bringing great speakers like you as well. So thank you so much to EMCC Cyprus.
100%.
So Jane Adshead-Grant, I'd like to introduce you. You are an executive coach, a speaker, and an author. And you have a very illustrious list of companies and individuals in your roster of clients. Thank you for making the time for joining us today.
You're very welcome.
So we're talking about connection, and let's start from there. What does connecting with others mean to you, Jane?
Well, that's such a beautiful question. For me, human connection is what it's all about today. I think in this world, which is increasingly sort of focused on technology and focused on speed rather than depth, and finding solutions rather than thinking for ourselves. And so connecting for others for me is about a decision to listen to each other in a way that really generates our finest thinking. And connecting for me is about being willing to provide that space, a space that says you matter. I'm interested in you, who you are as a human being. And I feel when we provide that experience for another, human to human, we get a much deeper connection than when we are in this sense of urgency and rush and trying to find a solution before we've had the chance to think together. Listening to each other to enable others to express themselves fully, not only what they're thinking, but also how they're feeling. This, for me, is what it means to connect to another.
It's easy, as you mentioned, to get lost in the speed of things, yeah? Yeah, I bet your clients are very lucky to have you helping them create that space of getting out of their day-to-day and finding other solutions in the space that you create for them. Good job.
Well, thank you, Stephanos. And I'd really love to anchor that because it's not lost on me that clients will say to me so regularly, this is the one time in my week or my fortnight that I truly get to think through this situation around my business or my team, because, I'm in meetings, back-to-back meetings all day, and I rarely have the chance to be listened to, free from interruption and free from judgment. And that is the experience that helps generate their finest thinking, to your point, in a world where they're constantly pressured to do things quicker, faster, with less resources. So I feel very privileged in the role that I do and see the impact it has on others.
And how do you connect with yourself before entering these sessions? If you have any practices, or how do you view that relationship?
Well, one of the things for me that's important is building a relationship with clients for the longer term. And what I mean by that, if I'm engaged for like a 6-month coaching program, for me, what I love most is to have an ongoing relationship rather than something that's transactional. So rather than just show up, meeting, another meeting, it's about How do we foster that connection ongoingly? And I think that comes from, so the pre-work I'll do for myself is just a quiet moment of reflection before I approach a coaching session. And it could be on my journey to visit my client. It could be sitting in reception for 10 minutes beforehand. And, I love the fact you've asked me the question, because I hadn't really thought about this. Well, I have a while ago, but it's bringing it all back to me. My practice to connect with myself is my ability to listen to myself first. And I offer this, in fact, in my latest book, The Listening Coach, as the first stage of listening. I share 5 levels of listening. And the first level is about listening to self, because in order for us to listen well to another so that we connect deeply, we need to listen to ourselves first. So my way of doing this is listening to myself with compassion, rather than in combat. So rather than beat myself up for not having done something, or, whatever's happening in the day, rather than, okay, Jane, so, what do you want for you and your client in this session coming up? What is it that you've been learning about yourself for yourself over the last wee while? What do you expect to work well in this time together? So my connecting with myself, the preparation, are the questions that I ask myself in order to be at ease, free from any distraction, and being totally present for my client. And the depth of presence enables them to do deeper work. What about you? Can you share with me, how do you practice connecting with yourself? I'd love to learn.
I practice daily meditation that helps me to, I view it as a very practical tool of having a more stable and tangible base, if you will, so I can step on, sit on, think on a daily basis. So I feel like it's like almost my the floor that I'm standing on a daily basis. And depending on how grounded I feel, that's an indication of how well my thinking goes, my creativity, my interactions, my planning, my strategy. So I feel that, 5 minutes of self-reflection, of just quiet time before I go either on stage or into a session or in a place where a lot of my attention is required. So if I retreat from connecting, because it's sometimes we need to, have a break from connecting with others in order to connect with ourselves more deeply, I find that that's very helpful to me.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
And thanks for asking. And I'm wondering if there's a difference in the way that you prepare or connect with yourself before a session with a client versus before you go on stage. For example, when I saw you in Cyprus where you were addressing 100, 200 people, is there a difference in the way that you prepare?
Well, yes, and first of all, I prepare by connecting with my audience first. So I know we connected afterwards, but before I was on stage, I will deliberately, intentionally move into the audience to meet people. And that's really important for me, because I love to connect with the audience to find out why they're there. What would they most like to accomplish through their time at that event? What's of most interest to them? And so that was really helpful for me from the outset. So that's one way I prepare. And then secondly, for me, in terms of that sort of physical energy of stepping onto the stage, it's really around recognizing the audience as my own thinking partner. So seeing them as a group of people that are here because they want to be here. They're here because they're interested in the message that I'm going to send. And so I perceive the audience as a listening partner for me that enables me to speak hopefully more eloquently, be at ease myself because of the way I choose to see the audience.
That's interesting. How did you evolve into that way of interaction or presentation to yourself of the audience?
Well, it's my work in the thinking environment. So, the body of work that informed my speech on that day and the work that I do today and teach others is that of what we call the thinking environment. The thinking environment, which was pioneered by Nancy Klein. And this body of work enables us to discover what it means to think for and as ourselves, underpinned by this, what I would call the ultimate level of listening, generative listening, where we give our generative attention. And it's in that work that I discovered presenting in a thinking environment. So how might I, as a speaker, apply what I teach others and what I've learned and keep discovering about what it means to be a thinking environment? So for me, as a speaker, to think well as I present, it was actually, let me embody the 10 components of a thinking environment that I shared some of them on the day, for myself. So that was, the journey for me evolving into that way.
Can you share a little bit more about what it means when you say generative attention? It's a really interesting term, and how that evolved in your work.
Yeah, certainly. So generative attention, this idea of creating a space, or holding a space for others to think as and for themselves, their finest independent thinking, Stephanos. So generative attention is a way that says, it's a way of being. And I often think about it as a decision. So first of all, I decide to give you my attention. It's not simply paying attention. For me, giving attention is an act of creation. You see, so when I give you my generative attention, which is I'm interested in what you're saying and what you go on to say, more than I am listening to form a reply, to bring a solution, to offer a judgment. Generative attention is generating your finest thinking, because my level of listening to the whole self and where you might go next, with a level of ease in myself, with a level of quiet appreciation. Well, it's not actually quiet, it's quiet because I don't vocalize it at the time because I'm listening. So there's a quiet appreciation, and generative attention, what it also looks like is a promise that I'll not interrupt you. And that matters. The reason it matters is because the brain experiences interruption like a physical assault. And when we decide to give generative attention, we honor the promise, I'll not interrupt you. And I'll let you know that I'll not interrupt you. And the reason it's important to let people know they won't be interrupted is because something changes in the brain chemistry. When you know you'll not be interrupted, the blood flows more easily. The synapses between the neurons begin to move and connect. We see greater creativity. I see in my clients a greater level of confidence. And a greater level of clarity emerges.
I must say, when you were also on stage, and it just clicked right now, when you said that you use the same framework or methodology as one-to-one versus when you're on stage, even with, I don't know, it was 150, 200 people in the room, I could feel that you were creating that space both for everybody at the same time and each one individually. So I felt like you were creating that when you were there, and that you were able to hold the room in the way that you are describing. So yeah, it's really interesting to also hear you talk about it and see how that evolved and how you use it. So yeah, You're walking the talk.
Wow. Well, thank you. That means a lot. I'm
Yeah.
thrilled that you felt that.
You mentioned earlier other levels when we were talking about connecting with yourself. You mentioned some other levels that we didn't go into. If you want to go into that from your latest book.
Thank you, for sure. And because I think this is the foundation of connecting with people. I think I shared with you earlier my vision. I imagine a world, Stephanos, where we listen first. We listen to each other to enable them to be who they're meant to be. And the 5 levels of listening that I've discovered thus far, the beginning was, I said, self-listening. So to be a great listener, we need to apply listening to self first, that piece of reflection, asking questions that will enable us to be compassionate upon ourselves, learn more about ourselves. The second level is not one I advocate, but one you need to know about, which is pretend listening. And I'm sure that you perhaps, and certainly many of your listeners, will have experienced someone shows up and they look like they may be listening, but you can tell. Their mind is elsewhere. They're thinking about the Christmas arrangements that are coming up, or, so I forgot to take the meat out of the freezer for dinner tonight, or something else has taken their attention. So pretend listening is something that we need to be aware of, and then bring our focus and attention once more onto the speaker. The next level is factual listening. This is where we're listening to the facts, the information, the data. And it's really a great level of listening to help us discern what to do next. Is this a moment, for example, to coach somebody? Is this a moment where we get to mentor? Is this a moment where we decide, actually, no, I'm going to collaborate with another? Or is this a moment where we just need to give a direct input with a view to supporting somebody? So factual listening is important to help us make decisions and discern the situation. The next level up, which listeners will be familiar with, I'm sure, is empathetic listening. And this is where we're listening beyond the facts. We're listening to the non-verbals, we're listening to the emotion, we're listening to what sits underneath those facts. Empathetic listening means that I am sitting alongside you and I want to experience perhaps what it might be like to experience what you're experiencing. So help me understand what it feels like for you. And then the last level of listening thus far is generative listening. So generative listening is this ability to listen to another to generate their finest thinking. And this way of being is still, it's not difficult. It's just that it's rare. And it's not that we don't know how, it's often that we've forgotten what we already know about our capacity to listen at this level.
Also, what you mentioned in the beginning, the speed with which things are moving, and that we get carried away, that we're thinking of 2, 3, 10 things at the same time. So it's hard to create that pause or that pocket of time to focus on one thing or one person, and we're always going to the next and the next, and how to be on the 5th step before you even take the first step. So
I think it's so true. And I guess what I would love just to support your thinking on that is this idea that, I feel we live in a world that's increasingly encouraging us to look outwards for answers and solutions. So again, with the speed of time, it's like, oh, I'll just go to AI, I'll just go to Google, I'll just go ask someone directly. And when we think about connecting to ourselves, it's, what I noticed, it became very apparent for me in COVID, where some of the clients I was coaching, or rather just after COVID, found our reconnecting with coaching quite difficult, because my style of coaching is encouraging them to think for themselves, to invite them to, become more resourceful. And they had spent 2 years being told what to do. You can take a break here. You have to wear a mask. You have to stay at home now. You can and can't do this. You can only have a social group of this size. And we were, all of us, living in this really unusual world where we were being governed. And then people were coming back to work, and I was saying, and what do you think? What are your thoughts? It's like, hang on a minute, you're now asking me, this whole idea of returning to work in the hybrid. Gosh, I had so many coaching conversations about that around, well, is it possible? Could we do that? How do you think it might be? And then reconnecting with themselves was such an interesting leap. And that next 12 months was my time spending helping people trust themselves afresh to think as and for themselves. It was fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting time that we didn't think at some point, we didn't think we're going to get out the other end, but I guess we did somehow.
Yeah.
By the way, you were recently in Japan. Do you have any thoughts on the way that you connected there versus in the UK, for example, or in Cyprus?
Oh, gosh, what a fabulous question. Yes, well, Japan and Cyprus. I was very blessed in my time in Cyprus because I found the EMC leadership group, the EMC delegates on that conference, such a welcoming and encouraging, really exciting group of people to be around. Really, it was palpable. Their interests, their desire to learn, the growth in which was being emerging as a result from a people development perspective. So that was one that I particularly experienced in Cyprus, and hence would love to return. In Japan, I found the culture very distinctly different in a beautiful way. The distinction, I would say, is one, in comparison to Europe, was their honouring of respect, their deeply held respect for each other and others. So much so, you'd be travelling on a tube or a metro, and it's not appropriate to talk. Like, they just say, refrain from speaking. People are on their mobile phones, not as much as I see here on the tubes in London, but everything's very quiet. And if you do speak, you whisper. So people refrain from speaking on a tube. Definitely no speaking in lifts. You go into the lift and no one speaks. Like, really? They are very comfortable with silence. Which, of course, is one of the key skills for me of listening. I'm very comfortable with it and enjoy it. But a lot of people I work with, they really struggle. In fact, you may have seen the statistics that it used to be something like 18 seconds before somebody would interrupt a silence. Today, it's only 8. So I think for me, the things that stood out culturally, the difference between Europeans and the Japanese was this stunning level of respect. They queue for everything, restaurants, walking across the streets. We were 20 deep on a pavement to cross the road, but all beautifully just waiting, no hustle and bustle. Tokyo was crazy. It's a mega city, 37 million people.
Wow.
But then I was traveling, there was an American lady in our group, and she was saying, this doesn't feel like a city, because back home you'd hear beep, beep, Hong Kong, da, da. None of that.
Wow. How were you at connecting when you were a child, like 9, 10 years old, Jane? Sorry.
How was I connecting when I was a child? I think the role that I took on as a child was very much a peacekeeper. I hadn't realised that listening was a skill that I developed at a very young age. We're all born with a capacity to listen, but to listen quite deeply and empathetically, I think I learned as a child. And so for me, connecting as a child was 2 things, actually. One was being very empathetic towards others. I will also confess to being a people pleaser. I'm a recovering people pleaser. I think that was my way of connecting, driven out of a sense of fear, actually. Yeah. And I've been on a journey as an adult to discover more of what that was about and how I am now. But I think my early years, I feel very, very lucky to of some situations that could be quite difficult. I find I always grow out of those, and therefore one of those things was my ability to listen with empathy.
Ah, it's really interesting. As my experience as a child is like I was completely disconnected and I didn't know how people connected with each other. I had no idea how that game was played. So, but my curiosity, I was always very curious. So my curiosity was bigger than my fear. So I just tried and saw how the, stumbling, fumbling around the playground, etc. But it's interesting to hear that you were that connected with that as a child, and to see goes to show how many different um, experiences and how each person lives through their own experiences as children and as adults. When you think of yourself at 19 and knowing the things that you know now, what would you advise your 19-year-old self around connecting?
It's one of the most wonderful investments you can ever make. So in my 19-year-old self, I would say, continue with the effort to connect with people. So go have that cup of coffee. Take some time out to forge a relationship, to connect with work and personal friends. Connecting with people, I often talk about listening as the currency of relationship. And so as my 19-year-old self, I would say, really master your skills of listening. Make the decision to invest in your relationships. Those, the ones that matter. We talk about your kind of different levels of network. You've got your kind of inner network, your personal friends and family, then your operational network, your work colleagues and teams, and then the strategic network. Like you and I could be what we call a strategic network. We don't work together, but we've connected with each other on a topic that's dear to both of us, and therefore support one another in sharing our message across the world. And so my 19-year-old self would say, invest in those three networks to foster your learning, to be able to grow as a human being, and to support others along their journey in the world.
And what if your 19-year-old self said, why bother? I just don't want to bother with those things. What's in it for me?
Oh,
As teenagers do sometimes, challenge us, which is good. It's a good thing.
it is a good thing. Why bother? I would say because we live in a world that is it's characterized by speed over depth. Technology is moving forward at such a pace. With AI, we spoke about again at the conference, it's tremendous gifts, but if we rely on it too much, we fall into cognitive debt. And therefore we reduce our own capacity as a human being. So as a 19-year-old, and you just say to me, why should I bother? I would say, because the nature of the world and the pace of technology is the human skills of listening, of connecting, of being empathetic, of leadership, are those skills that will continue to support you become who you're naturally meant to be and support others around you accomplish their aspirations in the world we live in today. And actually, I think it's the human connection that is where we receive our most and greatest satisfaction. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And there's so much talk about AI, which is fantastic technology. I love it and as each tool evolves, it's about using it for the benefit of doing good and to, do either things faster, deeper, or just enhancing each sector that people work in. But I do agree that, the human connection and the energy that you give and receive between two human beings, as technology evolves, I think that will become, for lack of a better word, even more premium or more valuable. Because, the energy and the soul there, however you want to characterize it, it's not a machine, it's a human being. It's the exchange is not bits and bytes, which they have their own job. It's a human connection, which is it's unique. So yeah, you can't replace that.
I'm so with you. And if I may just share a brief story of how that really plays into my experiences of when I travel, both for work and personally. So when I was in Cyprus, one of the things that I did was book a walking tour on the second day, just before I left in the morning. We went to on the Larnaca. Is that right? Yeah, on the coast. And we booked a walking tour. One of the other speakers and I, we had a morning free. So we booked the tour. And I do this in every city. I love it so much because we learn about the city and its developments from somebody who's local. And I love learning from the speaker there on the tour and also the other people I meet. And so we had a lady from Austria, we had a couple from Germany, there was an American, and then the two of us. And so, that for me is, I could have just picked up an audio guide, and walked around the city plugged in.
Yeah.
But that's not the experience I want.
Exactly.
I want to be with other people to learn and have a conversation and, connect to the city, the environment of where I'm at and the history around it.
Yeah. And talking about and you're mentioning how valuable the human connection is. And if we relate that also to coaching, I often encourage my clients to use AI as a coach. And in the beginning, other coaches were saying, "What do you mean? You're trying to replace your own self?" I said, "Let's try and see what happens." I was curious to see, because when I'm in it, I'm afraid of something or starting to worry about something, I just instinctively go towards that instead of avoiding it. So I said, okay, let's see what happens. And what happened is they started working on more sort of tactical things with the AI as a coach. And the result was that they were bringing more high level or strategic or more personal or more human issues to the conversation, to the sessions. So I encourage my clients to use it, and it's amazing how and I feel that it enhances our sessions. It doesn't mean that it replaces. What's your experience has been around that?
Well, I was going to ask you, if I might just clarify, are you inviting them in, sharing with them an AI coaching bot? Or are we talking of one of the AI platforms like Perplexity or ChatGPT?
Yeah, the platforms. Yeah,
Okay.
they use it. So they go in and they assign a role to them as a coach, and they start, bringing topics to the conversation, let's say. And I found that the level of subjects that are brought to our sessions are of higher level and deeper level versus, so they resolve sort of the more tactical things with technology, and they come to the session with different topics. Really interesting.
Wonderful. Well, I love that. And I'm about to experiment. At the conference, we met with Rebecca Rushman, who talked
Yes.
about AI, which was phenomenal. So I'm connected with her to learn more. So I use AI for my own business, but not not in the kind of coaching sense, more as a, to support my thinking and draft some of my, it helps me with my ideas and developing them further. So some of my written work, it will help me with that. What I have experienced for the first time this week was one of a gentleman that I worked with last year as a fitness coach. So for personal life, I got a message from him on Instagram, and I responded when I was still over jet lag. So it was 4:30 in the morning, my time. So I just acknowledged something he put on. I said, "Oh, this is great. Good to see this happening. Well done." And then, boom, a message came back at 4:30, and I'm thinking, and I said, "Hi, Danny, is this really you? Are you really awake at 4:30?" Yes, I am. This is the response was a hazard of working with busy people like you. And then I respond. Anyway, for a moment, I thought it was really him, and then I wrote something a bit more fully, and then he came back within a second of a paragraph like this. I thought, "Oh no, that's not." And I said, "Can I just check? Is this really you, or is it an AI?" And he said, "Oh, it is. Yes, it's an AI. I'm Danny, but I'm working with AI." But I have to say, it was really good. The responses were, "You've just been back from your travels." I mean, it was so good. Are you struggling with jet lag, or is it that you want to get back into your routine? I was like, really, really good. So I'm curious to see. I love what you were saying about it helps us with the sort of more tactical things, but it will bring the deeper things of levels of conversation that we want to explore with the coach.
Yes.
Which I love. So I'm really loving this idea, building on what you shared with me. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Jane, if you think of our audience and people that you would be listening or viewing this episode, and if you would give them one piece of advice to take action 1 hour after they watch the episode as to one thing to do around connecting, what would that one thing be that you would advise them to do?
I would say the next time you have a conversation with somebody, promise not to interrupt and listen free of judgment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And is there a dream connection that you would like to make that has not been created for you yet? Maybe we put it out into the circle of levels of connection in the universe. You never know what can happen.
Wow. Dream connection. Goodness. I feel so lucky meeting so many interesting people. I suppose what's coming to mind, a dream connection would be to to meet personally the Dalai Lama. I find him such an I went to one of an event with him many years ago when he came to London. I've been blessed to work in Nepal a fair bit, and some of the Tibetan refugees that I work with there have had the privilege to do just that. And so I'm always in awe and wonder of his wisdom. And whilst I'm not a Buddhist myself, I have access to, and I've worked with many people who are, and I love the philosophy. So whilst I'm a Christian by background, the philosophy of Buddhism is so yes, that would be a dream connection.
So what's one step that you would take to get closer to that dream connection?
That's a great point. So I was last year working in a school in Nepal where the head teacher went to in North India, where the Dalai Lama lives, the Dharamsala. And I offered to go to that. I said, because they love, and this body of work, I took the same body of work that I've shared with you today into school. So I was teaching the teachers and the pupils how to listen generatively. And he said, this would be wonderful to take this body of work to Dharamsala, which is the community of the Dalai Lama. So, and actually back then I said to myself, why don't you just follow up, so that could be one step. I could connect with Sering Nobu at the school and say, look, you mentioned this might be a possibility, or it would be a good idea. How do I do that? How do I get myself to Dharamsala?
When do you want to do that? We're starting coaching.
Well, I just love the invitation, as you say, to put out these intentions. I mean,
Yes.
God bless him, he's 88. He's 88, 89. So same age as my dad would have been. So 89. So yeah, time is, ticking. You never know, do you?
Now that you voiced it, I think you're going to go ahead and make that call this week. So
Well, thank you for your encouragement. How
it
about you?
was.
Your dream connection, just before we finish up.
It's really interesting. I ask that question and I never think about it myself. Dream connection. To be absolutely honest, at this point in time, I want to go deeper. I know it's going to sound cheesy, but it's the most honest answer I can give at this point in time. I just want to go deeper within myself and connect with myself deeper. To be honest, I feel like, especially with the last year, I've been on a journey of discovery, and I'm finding out so many things. So I think I'm going to give myself another 6 to 12 months to go even deeper. And I'm so excited as to what I'm finding out, and different things that I had no idea that I had within me. So I just want to go deeper there. And then I think the rest is easier, to be honest. That's what I've been finding out, that the deeper you go inside, then everything else just becomes a lot easier.
Wow, I love that. Goodness me, that is so. I mean, I so appreciate your. Well, actually, I would love to say courageous humility, because it takes courage to go deep inside, because we don't know what we might be revealed to us, do we?
It's such an exciting journey. You find good things, bad things, ugly, smelly, not good, everything wonderful. So it's just fantastic. It's a trip. Let's put it that way.
Well, thank you for sharing
Jane,
that.
oh, you're welcome. It's been a really wonderful conversation. I thank you once again. But before we leave, I have two last questions. What was useful for you from this conversation that we had today?
Oh, I love the opportunity to reflect on connecting and what it means for me. And I loved learning from you about your own experience of whether it be using AI, that beautiful last bit about you're going to connect more deeply with yourself.
Thank you. And the last piece of our episode today is extending another invitation, actually an invitation from me to you to come to Cyprus, and we can have a follow-up levels of connection conversation in Cyprus. And you've been here before, so it's you know where to go now.
Oh, well, that means a lot to me, and I would love it. And I am planning to come back in April. And
Ah,
yeah, so the ICF are running a conference, and so they were
very
very.
good.
So I will definitely make an opportunity for us to reconnect and meet up in person. I'd love it.
Yes, would love to have a in-person conversation. That'd be fantastic. Jane,
Wonderful.
thank you once again. It's been a real pleasure and honor to have you, and so much value out of our conversation today. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you too.
Thank you for viewing and listening another episode of Levels of Connection. Thank you for your continuous support, and please share your comments about what was useful from today. See you soon.